Hello and welcome to another digital woodcarver how-to tutorial. Not really a how-to in this particular video. What we're going to do is we're going to be taking a look at the OmniControl user interface. We're going to just kind of get a look at the layout, let you know exactly what things are on the right side of the screen, what things are on the left side of the screen, what's on top and on the bottom, and all that stuff. We're just going to kind of get an overall view and layout of the OmniControl user interface in this video, just to kind of orientate you to what's what. And then in the upcoming videos, those will be how-tos and how to set certain settings or use certain features and things like that. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the user interface. And the first thing I want to talk about is that there are three different versions of the user interface. And so you have a version of the user interface for every machine that falls in the category of the 1824, 2636, 3648, and then you have the user interface for the 2440, and then you have the user interface for all the machines with or without, automatic tool changer, the 4848, the 5100, and the 5x10. Now, the difference between the user interfaces are going to be the buttons and menu items that are available. And when it comes to the difference between the mini carver and the 2440, or the 2636 and the 2440 and things like that, is the 2440 is the only unit where the router will pivot 90 degrees to go into fourth axis mode. The mini carver, the 2636, 3648, 4848, 5100, all of those units and all the router stays upright as it carves over the rotary axis. Only the 2440 rotates, so the 2440 user interface will have an extra button here at the top. This little button that shows kind of the simulation of a router tilting sideways to enable rotary axis mode. That's it for that. So if we were to look at the other user interfaces and everything, which we're about to, that's going to be the one difference. This icon will not be at the top of the other user interfaces. Now, the other difference is over here on the right-hand side. So the smaller units, such as the 1824, the 2440, the 2636, and the 3648, really all the machines, should I say, have the option, have the ability to do semi-automatic tool change. And that what that means is if the machines are equipped with limit switches and you have a fixed tool height setter mounted to your machine, then you can activate semi-automatic tool change to where when you're running a tool path with multiple tools, the the unit will present itself to a certain location for you to change tools, and then it will go back to that fixed sensor and it will measure itself and it will continue the carving. Semi-automatic tool change. Fully automatic tool change means that there's an actual rack where the machine goes and picks up and drops off tools and everything and measures from that rack. So that's full automatic tool change, right? So semi-automatic tool change, the spindle presents itself to the user to a particular position set on the table itself, and then the user changes the bit, clicks through the prompts, and then the OmniControl will take over and do all the semi-automatic tool change features and everything. So on the right-hand side, the semi-automatic tool change menu is a simple tool measure button with the 1 through 8 tools, and then the enable tool table menu for enabling and setting, edit your tool table option there to where you can edit your tools, locations, and everything like that, which we're not going to get into in this video, but we'll talk about that. Now, if I were to close out of the OmniControl, I'm in the 2440 window here. All right, so if we were to go over and look at the 5100 as an example, our 4x8 unit with full automatic tool change options, you'll notice the menu down the right-hand side is much more populated. We have things like a warm-up cycle for the spindle. We can measure the tool length for a single tool, or we can measure a tool length for the entire rack. We can change manually from one tool to the other. We can open or raise the dust brush. We can turn measure on or off. We can set the tool table. We can set the tool rack positions on the rack, and then we can do what's called a power down procedure. And so those menu items on the right-hand side are populated on the profiles, the OmniControl user interface for the units that have full automatic tool change. And you'll notice they have the same icons across the top. And the icon that's missing is the one icon with the rotating spindle, which is the, dedicated to that, that 2440 and everything. So that's the differences between the profiles as far as like the look and everything, and all the buttons and features. Everything else is the same except for the menu on the right will change depending on if it's semi-automatic tool change or fully automatic. And then the menu across the top, those buttons will change only by the one icon if it's 2440 versus the other machines and stuff. All right, so let's go back. We're going to go back to the 2440 user interface, and we're going to just kind of go through the layout, and we're going to just check everything out. All right, so in the user interface, let's talk about it. We'll start kind of from left to right. Everything is the same as what you've always been used to in the Planet-CNC TNG software as far as the TNG software buttons. But there is going to be a new set of buttons down below, the C1 through C9 here. Now, depending on your resolution, you might not see all 9 buttons. If your resolution is set really high, or really low, one of the two, it'll cut off some of the buttons. You'll see just a plus sign down there that you'll click to see your other buttons and everything. But C1 through C9, that's your coordinate systems. So if you're dividing your table up into sections, which we talked about in the live 3-hour event and everything, if you're dividing your table up into coordinate systems, and you might have, something clamped on the table in one position and then something clamped on the table in another position, you can set up those coordinates, those starting points, those starting coordinates, and you can lock those in so that you can quickly move from one coordinate location to another, and you're operating in different coordinates of the machine, in the user interface. So when you're in coordinate system number 1, G54, the machine knows where everything is for coordinate system number 1. If you switch over to coordinate system number 2, G55, then it's going to be operating based off of the coordinates of that, wherever your start point is and things like that, based on what you've locked in for coordinate system number 2, so on and so forth. So these are your coordinate systems down the left-hand side. And we're not getting into what these features do or how to set them up or anything in this video. This is just a walkthrough, a very quick walkthrough on what the user interface is. And then we'll actually have individual videos for how to set up your coordinate systems, how to set up your buttons and use them across the top menu, how to set up semi-automatic tool change, and what accessories you need to make that work, things like that. So we'll get into those in their own independent little videos. In this video is just to walk through the user interface. So just so you know, you have your main menu across the top of the screen, And then you have your OmniControl menus to the right here, these icons and everything here. And starting at the OmniControl, we have our two the quick set block, that little 3-inch by 3-inch aluminum quick set block. To use the quick set block to set X, Y, and Z, that's that first icon. To use the quick set block to set the Z axis only when the quick set block, that's the second icon. We have a trace, a verify carving area icon that will outline the carving area of the file, the current file that you have loaded. It'll outline where it's going to carve. It will raise up. It won't turn on the router or anything, and it'll simply just outline where it's going to carve and return back to the start position. You have enable laser mode. You have move the laser to the spindle position. Enable spindle mode, which you're commonly known as mill mode. It's now spindle mode. This is when you're running your spindle. Enable laser mode is when you're running your laser. Move the spindle to the laser position. So these move to, so that way we can use the laser and the router in the same job, and it will automatically set XY for the XY position for each of the router and the laser, depending on which one we're using at the time, based on an offset. And these buttons have to be programmed. So we'll talk about that in another video. Enable rotary axis mode. Now, enable rotary axis mode is only for the 2440. Every other machine, rotary axis mode is already enabled. You just gotta zero out your X, Y, and Z on your rotary piece and run it, because the routers move over and carve over the top of that. The only thing that changes is with the 2440 is because it pivots 90 degrees, the motors change. The motor assignment changes. So there's an actual activate rotary axis mode button for the 2440. It's not for any of the other machines. And then we have our rotary axis step calculator that is going to calculate the motor steps and the motor speed per your stock diameter, and that will set the settings in the back end. Once you use that and everything, you type in the size of the diameter of your stock, click the OK button, and it'll make the adjustments accordingly. So that's the buttons across the top. And again, only the 2440 will have the enable rotary axis button. Otherwise, all the other machines, rotary axis is always active. It's just a matter of, do you have your rotary axis mounted and set up? All right, so that's those icons across the top. Now, the window on the left-hand side where your coordinate systems are, your position, should I say, not coordinate system, your position. This is your position state window. And so we have our work position, which you're going to be operating from this point on. If you're using OmniControl, you are in the work tab. You're operating from the work tab. You're zeroing out your X, your Y, your Z on your workpiece in the work tab. You're no longer in the machine tab. Okay. Now, I say this as if it's, I'm talking to someone that says 1824 or 2440 that's been working in the machine, coordinate system or position state all the time. Individuals that had the commercial units and all always worked from the operating from the work tab. This is going to be new for you folks that have a mini Carver in 2440. So you need to operate at all times from the work tab. Your machine tab is the machine's position, and currently right now, unless you have limit switches on your table, your machine does not home out if you do not have limit switches. So therefore the machine position is kind of irrelevant, and it's an unknown. Once you get limit switches mounted and on your table and everything and in use, wired up, then you will be setting your machine position every time you turn your machine on. Now, our commercial units, when they turn the machine on, the first thing they do is home their machine, and that's that sets the machine's position. The operator tab in the position state is like a big set of calipers. You know, I can zero out the operator tab that does not make any effect or changes to my machine or work, and I can move a certain distance, and it keeps track of that distance like a big old digital caliper, right? I can just see how far I actually moved, you know, when I move from one pencil mark to another or whatever the situation is. And then G code just shows you where you're at within your G code. It shows you the coordinate system and all. So this is your position state. That's what this window is. Your speed and feed state, basically, window is your feed rate, how fast you're moving. It runs 100% of the G code unless you change it. And then your spindle speed, if you have a water-cooled spindle and not a router, your spindle speed can be adjusted here. It's running 100% of what the G code is set for unless you change it. So that's your speed state. Now, your tab state windows down here, we have G code, IO, mode, offset, program, limits, and SATC or ATC if the machine has full ATC capacity. SATC is semi-automatic tool change. Mode basically lets you know if you're in spindle mode or laser mode, and just let you know what your settings are for your spindle or your laser by default. Your offsets, if you are in a different coordinate system, it keeps track of what coordinate system you're in and the offsets assigned to that coordinate system. And again, we'll get into setting up coordinate systems and assigning positions in another video. The program tab, when you have a toolpath loaded, it just gives you information about that toolpath, the file name, the size of the file, how many lines are in the G code, what's the worst possible runtime, what's the best possible runtime, and then a countdown clock, things like that. So it gives you some general information. Limits, if you have your limits turned on, and if they're assigned and everything, or if they're off, the limits window will let you know what the limits are of your machine and if they're active or not. And if you do not have limit switches on your CNC machine, then you will not have your soft limits on, your limits on, and they will be in an idle state until you do activate them, which again, we'll talk about it in a different video. And SATC lets you know your current tool, the selected tool, and your spindle speed settings and everything for your semi-automatic or automatic tool change. And it keeps track of that. So that's your, program states, tabs and everything. The jog window down here, your jog speed is in the right corner. It can be adjusted by double clicking on it. You can also jog with your X, Y, Z, and your A axis, your rotary axis is always there as well too. All right, so that's your states. All right, your main panel, your main window here. This is going to be when you do have limit switches on, when you do home your machine and everything, this box here will be your table. You, up to this point, are not used to this grid being your actual table and layout and showing where your work is clamped on the table and all that stuff. You're used to seeing your work pop up in the down corner here or somewhere on the, on the screen that didn't really make any relevance and all. But now, if you have limit switches and you are able to home your machine, or if you set your machine's home position, then work position, your machine's home position, then it will keep track of itself and it'll keep track of where your work and everything is. So you'll see this red and green datum here. This is the work position, while the red and green datum down in the bottom corner, that is going to be your machine's zero position, datum position and everything. And so you're going to get used to that over time. But right now, again, for mini Carver 1824 users and 2440 that do not have limit switches yet, and again, limit switches, just so you know, will be released. They'll be available shortly. They're coming along very well. The kits are, and they'll be available soon. But for right now, you don't have limit switches and everything. So this will not be your table. And you're still going to see this red and green arrow kind of moving in odd places on the screen. And that's, that's going to be it. You'll be fine as far as that goes, but it's just going to be not accurate to representation, like on, where it is on that grid and everything on your table and stuff, until you're able to actually home the machine. Down below, we have our output window, where any information, anything that happens, it outputs information here. So an example, if I run the 4th axis step calculator, let's say I have a piece of stock diameter that is 2.5 inches in diameter, and I hit the check mark on that and I run this calculation, you'll be able to see that calculation in the output window. You'll be able to see exactly what it calculated and what it set your motor and speeds and everything to, and that it was completed successfully and stuff. So it'll just be a readout, and there'll be a place where you can clear that out if you want to. But that window is down at the bottom. You can bring it down or up however you want. And then you'll have a tab for editing G code. So if you ever need to edit your G code that you have loaded on the fly, you need to make a change or something, you can do it right here in this window. And you can edit it right there on the fly. Now down below is your MDI box. When you're not clicked into it, it says MDI across the bottom. And that's manual data input. This is where you type in commands like your S1 for your non-burning beam of your laser, or if you need to move the axis a particular, X 2 inches or something. The MDI is where you would type in that coordinate. Now, very important, if I type in X1 here and I hit enter in this control box, this coordinate system box, then it's going to move my work position. It's going to move my work position 1 inch. Okay. It's not going to be my machine position. My machine position is keeping track of the machine, right, where it's at based from its limit switches and all. It's moving, everything is operating from that work tab. So if I tell it to move 1 inch, 2 inches and all, it's going to be moving in the work tab and everything. Okay. Now, let's say that I am actually setting up a coordinate and I need to move to a machine position. Not a work position, but a machine position. In order for the software to go to a machine coordinate, I need to start my command with G53. And in that G53, then I can type in X, let's say 5. And right now my machine position is at 7.74. That's where the machine is currently at from its limit switches right now. If I come down here and say G53X5, when I move to that position, you'll notice that, the work only moved negative 1.7493 inches. But the machine position moved back to that 5-inch mark on the machine. So G53 is a very important number if you're trying to move a machine coordinate to a machine coordinate versus a work coordinate. If it's a work coordinate, for your work piece, I need to move 1 inch from my work 0 or 2 inches or 5 inches from my work 0, then you don't put anything. You just type in X1, X5, Y1, whatever it is. But if you need to move to a specific machine coordinate, you got to type in the G53 first before the command. Okay, very important. All right, so that's your MDI box, your manual data input box and everything over there. Now, over on the right-hand side is your G-code window. When you load a G-code file, this is where it populates over here. And that is going to be the same user interface for all the machines. Same state windows, same position windows, and all that for all the machines. The only thing that's different is the tool change icons and one of the icons across the top and everything. Other than that, that is our layout of OmniControl. Okay, that's the layout Very simple. Just get familiar with your layout. Now, in the following videos will be the specifics. How to set your tool table if you have semi-automatic tool change or fully automatic tool change. How to set your move spindle to laser position or your laser to spindle position. How to set your motor settings based on your coordinates that you would have transferred over, your machine setups and settings that you would have transferred over into OmniControl if you're migrating over from an earlier version of Planet-CNC TNG. All of that information is about to come to you, and we're going to be talking about that in the upcoming videos, and each of these things will have their own video, so it's short to the point and it does not get too confusing for you. Okay, everyone, that is a walkthrough of just the layout of the user interface. Get familiar with your tabs, get familiar with your, your windows and all. Make sure you're operating from that work tab, very important. You're no longer in the machine tab. Machine is one thing, work is another. We're going to start focusing on the work tab, your work, okay? All right, so that's a layout, and we will see you in the next video. Until then, stay sharp, happy carving. We'll see you in the next one. See you now.